Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Social Z Franchise Happy Hour. I'm the host, as usual, Calvin Smith, coming from a somewhat sunny day here in Northwest Florida. Looks like we're finally getting some spring weather, so I'm excited about it. And I'm very excited to talk to Sunny, who is in maybe a not so sunny California today. How are you?
That's right. It's raining here. I'm good. How are you, Calvin?
Doing great, doing great. And Sunny, just so everyone understands where you are, you're not in Roseville where your business is, but where are you located this evening?
Yeah, I'm still in the northern part of the state, but I live in a town called Oakdale, so it's Central Valley.
Sure, sure. And Sunny, thanks so much for joining us. Want to hear about your journey and how you got there and all the cool things you're working on. But let's go back a little bit. Are you from Oakdale? Are you from Northern California? Where are you from, and where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I am pretty much from this area. I was born in Napa. Actually grew up in
Hmm.
Utah, so that was a little
Yep.
detour out of the state, but came back after college. I attended Utah State University after high school, and when I got done
Hmm.
there, came back to California. My family's all here, so it made sense to come back this way.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So you went to Utah State, right? And graduated there, and then um, Sonny, talk about your journey after that. Did you go directly into working with Walmart? Because I know that was a good chunk of your career, or was there a path to getting there? Or?
Yeah, I didn't set out to work for Walmart. It was a kind of an
Yeah.
accidental landing there. While I was in school at Utah State, a recruiter came around to one of my classes, and they were, touting their internship program. So I said, well, I have to do an internship anyway. It's right here in town. So I did Walmart's internship program, and when I graduated and was ready to go out into the world, they offered me a job, and they said you can go anywhere you want to go. We have stores everywhere. So I said, well,
Sure.
let me go back, where my family is, and that's kind of how I ended up with Walmart. I went right into management from the internship program, so it was an easy transition. But it was definitely one of those things where I thought I would be there for a few years and then figure out what else I wanted to do. And then 20 years later, I was still there.
Sure, sure, absolutely, absolutely. And you spent most of your time with Walmart in Northern California, I'm assuming. Did you ever make it over to Bentonville, or was all your time there in California?
I didn't do anything in Bentonville. Yeah, so various stores, probably about 11 different stores, all in Northern California.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
kind of followed the promotions around. So, when
Sure.
you're wanting to get promoted, it helps if you're mobile and can go where they need you. So, as I applied for promotions, it was a lot of moving. So,
Sure, sure, absolutely. So was started off in Northern California, went to school and spent some younger years in Utah, came back to California, spent, a really good career there at Walmart. And so next step, talk to us about the thought process, the transition, the journey where you said, "Hey, I'm leaving this career with one of the largest companies in the world, and I'm going to go start a franchise." How did that come about?
yeah, so most of my career, as I mentioned, with Walmart was in management. So, I was an assistant manager, promoted to a co-manager, was a store manager for 4 years. And then started thinking, I've already been here. At that time, it was about 15 years, and started
Sure.
thinking to myself, well, it's already been a while. Do I want to stay with this company for another 20? Or, I still had quite a bit
Yeah,
of runway to go with my career.
sure.
So really, at about that time, I started thinking about what else I wanted to do. And it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to work for myself.
Hmm.
I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it was very safe and secure to stay with that corporate job.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I was making good money. I could afford whatever I wanted, and was still single, and sort of all my
Sure.
effort had gone into my career. So it was a really hard and long transition period for me. Um,
Hmm.
I would say I was somewhat risk averse. I was, like I said, comfortable and secure in my position. And
Right.
um, so I would say, and maybe this isn't, or it's a little embarrassing to admit, but it took me about 5 years to transition away from
Oh, wow.
corporate.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, so I stepped down from my store manager position because it's a very demanding job. I was working,
Mm.
probably 60 hours a week, and it kind of is all encompassing when you're responsible for, anywhere from a 60 to $80 million store.
Sure. Wow.
Um, so stepped back and went back to co-manager for several years, and that's kind of where I started figuring out how I was going to transition. And
Hmm.
when you're doing that, you're thinking of, I mean, I had tons of ideas of a business to start, and I would think of something and then start to go down that road and figure out what it was going to take to develop that idea. And maybe a little bit of shiny object syndrome. I would get another idea and
Sure.
start to go down that road.
Hmm.
And so it was, um, also figuring out I didn't want to buy myself another job or invent myself another job, because I
Right.
was really ready to get maybe my family started and ready to have more time. And so that was definitely a factor in it. I didn't want to
Hmm.
just, start another business where I was working 50 to 60 hours. Just, that's what I'm coming from. I don't want to go to that. So I tried to be very strategic. Um,
Hmm.
and, franchising was always, I think, sort of a part of that. Um, you know, being able to or trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Franchising was kind of like one of those options. But
Hmm.
I was really not finding something that spoke to me, I guess, that I was like, oh, I can really get behind this, and this is, interesting and um, new. And, you know, I had money, but I couldn't obviously like start a McDonald's or something where you need millions to get that started. So
Sure.
it needed to be something, within my reach. Um, so at some point, I just decided that franchising was probably the way to go because I didn't want to spend all that time ramping up the business from zero. It was
Right.
more of a plug and play type of thing. I didn't need to go from like bootstrapping. I could put a little money into it and be able to um, sort of hit the ground running, I guess. Um,
Sure.
so that's when I kind of started more getting focused on franchising. And I would say that was probably around 2019. And
Hmm.
I mean, lo and behold, this big thing was going to happen the next year. Um,
Sure. Sure.
and
And Sonny, you mentioned, it took you, approximately 5 years before you actually pulled the trigger, and you had some foresight, so you took a slightly less demanding job at Walmart, and during that time, it sounded like maybe you looked at some actual like startups where like kind of inventing your own things, doing that, and then you decided franchising was maybe a better place for you. During that thought process, were you working with like a franchise broker? Were you just doing all the research on your own, or what was your time spent on to kind of narrow down which path you wanted to go on?
yeah, I wasn't working with a broker. I'm pretty good at Google, so I was just on the computer, searching
Yep.
stuff up. Um,
Yep.
I guess early 2020 or late 2019, early 2020, I don't remember exactly, but you go online and maybe it's called, I don't know, maybe a clearinghouse where they list a bunch of franchises that
Yep.
are available. And I think I probably put my name and email into one of those, um,
Hmm.
just like looking for more information. I don't even remember which one, but actually, the franchise that I ultimately chose, they reached out to me. I'd never heard of it,
Okay. Yeah.
but I got an email and I was like, what's this?
Sure. Sure. So let's talk about it. So you were saying, end of 2019, you were kind of ready to move forward. You decided on franchising. And is this when someone from Hotworks reached out to you directly And what was that conversation, and what was the journey to actually say, okay, now's the time, and how did you get going then?
Yeah. Well, I think they didn't reach out to me until, like I said, the first months in 2020.
Okay.
Um, it kind of just aligned perfectly because Walmart was going through a restructuring. So they
Sure.
do that periodically where they restructure their management teams or even the associate base where, they're the corporate is saying we think it will run better this way or that way. And
Yep.
so that restructuring happened just right around the time where I got this call, and I
Yep.
just said, "Well, now's the time." Like if ever there was a time, they offered a severance during the restructuring, so I said, "Well, I'm going to take the severance. I'm going to, take the
Absolutely.
leap." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. And the timing worked out with Walmart, and what was it about HotWorks, and kind of what was that journey from the time you got that initial call and they said, hey, this is who we are. What was the path to saying, okay, this is the one I'm going to invest in, and how long did it take you to get going? And I would imagine there was probably some chaos in there because everything was chaotic in first half of 2020, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
um, yeah.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I was supposed to end my tenure with Walmart in March, but that was right when COVID was hitting. So they actually
Mhm.
asked me to stay on for another 60 days to help get
Oh,
through that sort of crisis. And, we were obviously one of the businesses that were open and trying to help
mhm.
people get through it. We were navigating the toilet paper crisis and all that weirdness. Uh,
Yep. Yep.
so I ended up staying on with Walmart until May. So, um, gosh, it was probably February or March when HotWorks reached out. And I should back up a little bit and say that when I was trying to sort of figure myself out and what my next journey would be, I heard or I read something that said that you should go into something that makes you feel accomplished. And
Mhm.
the couple years prior, I was doing a type of yoga called Bikram yoga. And when I thought, like, what in my life makes me feel accomplished, I said to myself, well, every time I complete that 90 minutes of a heated workout, I feel really accomplished.
Right. Yeah.
So when HotWorks called, I want to say probably around March or April, um, I was thinking, well, that's interesting because I was thinking, could I do something with Bikram? And the Bikram franchise was not stable. I felt like they had kind of an odd thing going on, so
Sure.
that wasn't really
Mhm.
viable. But um, it kind of HotWorks was sort of down that road. And
Mhm.
if you would have asked me when I got out of school if I would be in fitness, never would I have
Sure.
said I would have chosen fitness. That wasn't, I mean,
Yeah.
I hadn't my personal fitness goals and it's been a part of my life,
Mhm.
but I never figured that I would go into that business. So, um, had like a 4-week discovery period with HotWorks where we had a series of calls that they scheduled out, and they would, send me some discovery type documents about the company, and then I would have a call with their franchise recruiter. And I really liked that they did it that way. It wasn't, sort of an information dump on me because it gave me time each week to
Sure.
kind of digest and formulate some questions that I could ask on the next call. So I appreciated that. And I don't know if that's how other franchisors do it, but I did like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and after after I said, all right, I'm going to take my leave of Walmart, take the severance. I know that I'm probably going to go with HotWorks. Um, then comes the this is how much the franchise fee is, and so it's a
Yep.
whole deal where you've got to get your finances in order, and you're going to figure out how much of a runway do I have if this takes longer than I think it's going to take. I thought it was going
Right.
to take, I thought I would have my first studio up and running probably within a year. And we'll
Mhm.
get into that story that, 2 years later, it wasn't open yet.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
but it was that time during COVID when there was a lot of unknowns. That's,
Hmm.
to say the least. But um, the reason that I, really chose HotWorks after that 4 week, those discovery calls, and then I did my orientation with HotWorks, I really was impressed with their experience, their corporate structure, all the technology the company uses. Um,
Hmm.
the people working, everyone I met seemed very competent. And, coming from a background of Walmart, which is, one of the largest companies in the world, and I'm very used to that corporate structure. And I was
Right.
I was worried about a franchise that's small because I was thinking, is it going to be sort of a willy-nilly operation? And, is there
Hmm.
structure? Is there, you know, what I'm used to?
Sure.
And I felt like they
Yeah.
did. They had, obviously not on the scale and level of Walmart, but I wasn't necessarily wanting that. I just wanted to know that they had everything in order, and I felt like it was um, a company that I could make things happen with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people find that's the balance with franchising, right? Is we're sometimes used to the corporate structure and the kind of the security and the systems and processes, and you know, starting something from nothing is scary anyway. But if you've got a better roadmap and you've got some systems, you've got kind of the nuts and bolts that should fit together from the franchise model, then it's a easier path to success, I think, for sure. Sonny, you mentioned, so mid 2020, you pulled the trigger. You decide, hey, I'm going to get growing. You've got a plan to get your first location up for a year. Talk to us about the next 24 months. What happened? What was the story there? And when did you actually get that first location going?
Mhm. So yeah, I bought the franchise. I bought three franchise licenses in beginning of
Right.
June.
Yep.
So they had, either you can buy one for this much or you can buy a three pack, and they discounted those fees. So um, I looked at my new soon to be husband um, because I had just gotten into a new relationship at that time too. So said, are we going to do this? And are we going to do
Yeah.
three? So that was a conversation that we really had to both agree on, I feel like.
Hmm.
If you've got a significant other or a spouse, it's important that they're on board because it can be rocky and probably not quite as rocky as going through COVID, but I would imagine
Hmm.
anytime, you're outputting a lot of money and there's some unknowns,
Sure.
you just needed to be on board with it. So having that conversation was key. So started in June, looking for a space. And that was really where the hard part of this process began.
Hmm.
um, I found that, I knew the area I wanted to go. Roseville is sort of was always on my mind of it's a thriving community, growing, um,
Sure.
a lot of commerce, great chamber there, kind of checked all the boxes for a place to start a business. So once I knew I wanted to go there, we started looking for locations, and you know, landlords didn't seem to be in a hurry to get their
Hmm.
spaces rented. So I put, initially probably three or four letter of intents out, and tried to get those negotiations going. And I don't know if it was COVID or if it was just the area or what, but that was, a very difficult process. So I,
Sure.
had them saying everything from, well, we think that that's just a fad in fitness. It won't be around. You won't be successful. Got that. Um, Landlords not wanting to devise their spaces, not
Sure.
wanting to negotiate on price, not wanting to negotiate on tenant improvements. So that was a whole process. And that's what took the first year, just finding a
Oh,
place.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
picky as well because it was my first of three locations. So, there was a space where someone was willing to give me 6 months of free rent and, had a cheap rental rate. And, all those things. But I was like, well, is that where my studio would be open 24 hours? So it was important that it's a safe
Hmm.
area. And,
Sure.
85% of our members are women. So a woman coming at 10 o'clock at night to work out, is she going to feel safe there? So I was picky on
Sure.
the location as well. So, yeah, that first year looking for a space. um,
Yeah. And so after that first year, you find the first location, Sonny, and how long until you open the doors and what's the journey been like since you actually opened that first store and where are you at now? Do you have the other locations going? Are they in development? Like where do you sit today?
I just want to back up just a bit and say that there was a
Sure.
second major hurdle, and that was finding a contractor. And that was very difficult
Oh yeah.
in COVID because by 2021, it was like the economy was on fire, right? Everybody
Hmm.
was building everything, and you couldn't get lumber and just all those things that were happening. So I probably spent another 3 or 4 months trying to find a contractor and ended up negotiating with the landlord of the space that I got. It was a new development, and they agreed to use their contractor for my build out. So that was
Okay.
a saving grace that they did help
Sure.
out. And that's
Absolutely.
not typical from what I hear.
No, no, yeah. I mean, you're right. It's funny. We're 2020. You probably could have had your pick of the litter of contractors because everything was standing still. This 2021, it was chaotic for everybody for sure, for sure. So you get the space going, you get it built out, you open your doors. Kind of what's the journey been like since then?
So once we got through all that, did our soft opening in June of 2022. Um, we've had a very good reception in Roseville, and our membership is strong. It's been, after the contractor part, and then we got into early 2022, and we were hiring employees. So that was difficult too
Mm,
because we went through this job shortage where it was very hard to find employees. So, uh,
sure.
got my general manager hired and a couple of employees to support her. I would say, since we've opened our doors, we've grown every month. So,
Great.
successful location, I would say. Um,
Mhm.
my manager definitely runs the studio. She's there 40 hours a week. She's the general manager. I support her. I would say I
Mhm.
spent the most time there the month before we opened and the month after, because
Yep.
we were, getting everything ready to do our soft opening, and then um, getting all of our members onboarded that we were signing up during that pre-opening period. Um, Now I'm going probably to the studio I am averaging maybe 2 to 3 times a week. So I
Sure.
I work on the business every day. I'm
Mhm.
supporting from my computer, and when I'm going to the studio, I'm sometimes supporting there in an active role, and I like to do that a little bit because I want to know how everything works, and I want to know how to be able to ring up customers, and I want to know all those things, but I'm
Mhm.
happy in that I don't have to be there every day. And there
Sure.
there are some franchisees with Hotworks who are, more of the owner operator, and they're managing
Mhm.
themselves, and they've chosen to do that for whatever their reasons are. But um, that was not my goal in
Mhm.
getting into this franchise. I definitely, thinking of having, eventually I'll have three, so it's sort of impossible to do multi units and be there operating the business yourself. So,
Absolutely. So, Sonny, you mentioned, the challenges of hiring people, particularly early 2022, which was, it was a weird labor force and probably still is. Besides that, what do you see as the differences or challenges of hiring for, a small business with, a good brand recognition, but not quite the same as like Walmart, right? Where I imagine it's an entirely different process. What were the challenges that you saw and, you know, um, how have you been able to overcome like just finding good people, which is the challenge we all face, right?
I think that the key part of that was in the interview process. I did several interviews. That the general manager position is obviously the most important. So I did about, I think, three interviews to narrow it down to the right person. And it took a lot of explaining. I mean, when somebody applies to work at Walmart, they know what they're getting into.
Right.
They pretty much know the roles. They might even know what their compensation is going to be beforehand. Um,
Hmm.
and the interview process is sort of like, kind of moving through a system. So I
Right.
really felt it was more important to foster knowledge and foster a lot more back and forth conversation during the interview, make sure a lot of questions were answered, and trying to provide as much information up front as I could. I was new to it too, so I don't have all the information, but and then I wanted to also make sure that the people I was interviewing knew the difference in working for a franchise than working for a corporate company, because
Sure.
they would be working much more closely with me. When you're in at Walmart, you're sort of in a crowd, and you don't get a lot of, I would say, as much one-on-one attention
Hmm.
as you do with a startup franchise. I mean, do they
Right.
understand that a franchise, that they don't work for Hotworks, that they work for my LLC, and that we're licensed to use Hotworks,
Right.
brand and advertising and all that. So it was a lot of education. Um,
Hmm.
and then as we got up and running, I mean, it had to be, my manager had to be flexible, because I didn't have everything figured out from day one. And so there was a
Sure.
lot of decision making along the way,
Hmm.
where,
Hmm.
and even where she was involved in that decision making. I wasn't, it wasn't just top down. We would have discussions and say, what do you think about this? Or should we try that? Or, you know, um, in a franchise, you are using, in my case, the Hotworks, brand and all of their systems, but there is a small amount of discretion that we have when
Hmm.
making some decisions. So uh,
Sure.
it was good to have someone else to bounce ideas off of. And, like I said, we would try one thing. If that didn't work, then we pivot and try something else. And going through those early employees, we made a couple hires, and we had some momentum, and then they quit. And so we had to hire
Yeah.
more. And, it's a lot of training, but training
Hmm.
doesn't just help the person you're training. It also helps you to know
Sure.
and get educated as well. So it was kind of, you know, um, that was part of the process. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, any last question for you? Something I'm always curious about. You obviously had a great career at Walmart and were successful there, and learned a lot of things. When you started on this journey, definitely the issues with the contractors in the space was an issue. But what's been the thing that maybe you're not as good at that you thought you would be, and what's been your process to kind of do some personal development and improve in that area?
yeah. Yeah. The main thing that I didn't know if I would be good or bad at it, but was marketing, because you do not do any
Sure,
marketing at Walmart. That's all taken care
sure,
of for you.
yep,
And
yep,
so with a small business and a franchise, Hotworks does take care of a lot of our marketing, but it's the social media part
hmm,
of it that I was not good at. And I was not proficient in Instagram or Facebook, or,
sure,
didn't even really have my own pages up and running. But with a small business where you're trying to get local people to come to your business,
hmm,
it's huge. And
yep,
so that was a huge learning curve for me, just how to get posts done on Instagram, or, how to get more followers, or, um,
hmm,
so that was a big part. We've gotten a lot better at it. I won't say that we've mastered it yet, but um,
sure.
that was a part that I was not anticipating beforehand.
Sure, sure. There's always something that we don't know what we don't know until
Mhm.
we do it, right? And so there's always unique challenges. Well, Sonny, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you sharing your story and getting to know a little bit about you. And congratulations on your business and the journey that you've been on. It's amazing story to tell. And for someone that left a great career with, again, one of the biggest companies in the world during COVID, in California, which is its own challenges, and you were getting married at the same time. So you've had a busy few years. So congratulations on getting through that for sure. Sonny, what we'll ask you to do to wrap us up is just give us your 60-second elevator pitch. And to anyone that's taken the time to listen to me and Sonny talk this evening, we appreciate you and hope you join us on the next episode. And Sonny, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So HotWorks is a 24-hour infrared fitness studio. Our members work out inside of an infrared sauna. So they do HIIT workouts, isometric workouts, and it's all done at 125 degrees. So we are located in Roseville, California, and we would love to have anyone who wants to try it out come by, and we give you a free session. So you can try it and check out all the benefits. Um,
Sure. And Sonny, if we want to find out more about your facility or where you're located, where can we find out more information? On Instagram, on Google? Like, where's the best place to go?
yeah, so hotworks.net, and we have, under the locations tab, you can find all the different locations. There's probably one near you. We have almost 500 locations now. We're on Instagram and Facebook at HotWorks Roseville. And that's about where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, Sonny, thanks again. We appreciate it.